So I'll hand it over to Paul. I just want to make sure you're ready. Did you do your push-ups yet, Paul? Yeah?
I did. I let my face stop being flushed. So I didn't look like I tried to outrun a truck or something. So we're ready. I'm good. Hyped.
Awesome. Paul just taught me a new trick. Before any major presentation, do 10 push-ups. So I did mine as well. So here we go. So I'll hand it over to you. It's all you, sir.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Let me hit start on my timer here. My name's Paul Eldridge. I'm from Salesforce Technology and Products. One of the folks on my team, TPIL, Jenny, was, I think, one of the founding members of TechKnowCon. Yeah,
that's correct. Yes.
So this feels like an interesting full circle in some ways. And the quick TLDR here is this presentation, Salesforce, my team, our particular implementation of Pluralsight is one of their most successful. We have a relatively small amount of licenses, only about 4,000, 5,000. And we have 90,000 hours consumption all time in 3 years because we're so intentional with how we use it. We don't just barf it out to everybody and good luck to you. So that caused us to be invited to be guest speakers at Pluralsight Live. And what I'm going to talk about today is some of the patterns I've noticed in challenges across the cloud industry when everybody faces the same things, the same wrong guidance, and what I think works better. And with that, can you all see my screen? Type a 1 if you could see my screen. And also, if you haven't introduced yourself, please do. I'd love to find out what company you're from. I honestly think the collective skill and maturity of some of the folks on this call might be a little higher than what I presented to you before. So I hope this still lands the same way. If any of you have hard questions, I love those. Please hit me up. Okay, if we're ready with that, we're going to get started. Oh, Autodesk. You guys had this gorgeous office in our old landmark building on like the 3rd, 5th floor, and the elevator doors would open and it was like an aircraft engine in a glass case that was like, designers work here. Here's a propeller. And then the doors would close and we'd move on to something less cool. So talk about full circle.
Hey, Paul, I don't know if you're sharing your screen.
Oh, can you not see it?
No.
Oh, no wonder everybody was kind of curious.
Okay, perfect. I'll spotlight you again.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's begin. This is my story that I told everyone, and I think you'll all leave with something tangible and useful today. Let's begin with, it was a really beautiful fall day, about 60 degrees. The sun was setting. It was like yellow, you know, the end of the day, 5:30 p.m. And I get an urgent call pretty much from a data center colleague of mine who was friends of mine out here in Ashburn, Northern Virginia, where I am. And there's a brewery about 1 mile from one of the data centers. And he asked me, please come meet me here like today, if you can, with urgency in his voice. So I did. And he screeches up, jumps out of his car, kind of swaggery, and sits down. And I'm asking him, so urgent, what did you need me for? And he goes, hold on, first beer. He's kind of this swaggery, you know, old school data center dude. Comes back, thunk, puts the beers down. And then he looks me right in the eye, and with genuine fear in the human being's eyes in front of me, he asks me, what is my future here? Am I working on the steam engine while we're all moving to solar power? I work in data centers and first-party infrastructure. What's this AWS thing we're doing? This was a couple of years ago. And I just want you all to know that, because when I do what I do, what I'm going to tell you today, every time I do it, I see his face in my head. That human, scared human being who feels genuine anxiety for what their future is because the fast-moving tech industry moved on. And I kind of made a silent promise to him and to others that I sometimes say, we will never write you off as the human cost of progress. And I am part of that. We are all part of that. So that is the value, the values behind what I'm going to talk about today, even though we're going to get in the weeds and do nerdy stuff, I'm beginning with that. And that is where I come in. I remember very early on, I said, give me 30 days. And I did my first draft of an AWS preparedness program for first party folks. And we met there again at that exact table where they are right now. And I turned my laptop around and went, this is it. This is what I think we're going to need to do to be ready for this. And interestingly enough, just as part of that anecdote, he didn't need to do it. He just needed to see that it existed, which was interesting. It was more about the emotional story of feeling supported than tangibly doing it, which was a valuable lesson. So where I come in with that is I am Paul Eldridge, a senior technical product kind of and program manager. I hybridize the two a bit. And I am the PO of our public cloud enablement program for between 4,000 to 5,000 engineers. And a lot of this stuff touches almost all the 18,000 engineers in our technology organization. I'm also now the PO of a lot of our availability and service ownership enablement. And what he was talking about that day, AWS, what's this AWS thing? All of you now know as Hyperforce, the publicly announced cloud native redesign of Salesforce under the hood, one of the two biggest tech initiatives in the company's history that I've ever seen. It's transformative. We're leapfrogging 15 years of tech debt in 18 months. It's nuts. And it's a full cloud native redesign of a big monolith app sitting on top of raw hardware. It's not just an infrastructure story. It's a competitive advantage for Salesforce because our go-to market in a new region for a data center used to be 18 months. Now it's 45 days. It used to be $400 million. Now it's use what you need because of the cloud model. This transformation is probably not new to many of you. A lot of us are exactly in this situation now, or we're working at smaller, more agile companies that by their very nature had to already nail this from the very beginning. And I've been in talks with Pluralsight leadership and A Cloud Guru leadership and O'Reilly and other platforms. And part of my selfish goal here is if all of you like my vision here today, then join me and help me raising our voices together as customers, pushing the entire cloud learning industry in all the product managers that make the decisions for these platforms in the direction that we want this to go, of what we think will really make the big differences. And I'm challenging all of us here today. Some of you have already seen Think Like This. I love it. To just think differently about how you do these things as an L&D professional when you partner with engineering teams and architects. And I'm going to give us some examples in how we can hit the holy grail of actual, tangible, measurable outcomes, skipping past traditional L&D metrics of how many butts in a seat that doesn't matter, but what's tangibly different in the business. So I'm going to talk about three things. The general industry-wide challenge that I've observed after a couple times of this and talking closely with Amazon and the others' leadership, a Salesforce specific case study and approach of, in my opinion, one of the best ways I've ever seen this done, and where I think the cloud industry should go next. So the situation is that you, my dear learning professional, have been asked to rapidly execute a skills transformation strategy to cloud native, from monolith software devs used to first-party infrastructure to multi-cloud, full CI/CD DevOps, and you need to measure that readiness for 5,000 plus people. Cody the Bear is you, by the way. That's one hell of a big lift. Okay, so then the complication, though, is where does everybody start here? A lot of these folks, they'll go to the cloud vendors directly. They'll go right to AWS, training and certification, to big consultants. And what's the first thing all of them tell you? This expensive $10,000 a month consultant tells you, well, the primary tool is you want to get X% of your people certified. That's where everybody steers you. Oh, you want to get this amount of your workforce certified with the AWS or the cloud certs. And that doesn't actually meaningfully move your needle or your folks closer to the solutions of the actual problem space. It misses the key measurement of readiness and the special application of all of us as L&D people, which is synthesis and problem solving. That's where I'm going to be nudging us to. Our enterprise, and Jasmine will probably nod here, isn't just using these straight up cloud managed services like EKS, for example. We've got all this ecosystem of open source CNCF, and by that I mean Cloud Native Computing Foundation tools. We're using Helm, we're using Kubernetes, we're using Spinnaker, we're using Terraform, this whole tool chain that the cloud native, that the cloud vendors themselves in the certs don't touch. We don't use CloudFormation, we use Terraform. We don't use Amazon X-Ray. We have something called Tracer. We don't use Service Mesh X from Amazon. We use Istio Service Mesh, right? So every one of those shrinks the cognitive learning surface and the efficacy of every single one of these classes you take. It's a tough lift. And a lot of these are internal tools and services that folks need to understand. At particular one for Salesforce, we disallow raw substrate level AWS accounts. You don't get one. And that's something that when we bought Heroku, for instance, someone came to me and said, I just need an AWS account and an Amex and let me screw around. Nope, we don't allow that to happen because of cost to serve and attribution and threat surface left behind. So then that brings us to our question. All right. So certs aren't an outcome. Classes are not an outcome. What is? If we're not using the right technologies, well then, and we have to substitute a bunch of these out in these cert programs, what is a better thing? What actually is a tangible, measurable demonstration of a new technical capability that did not exist before? I don't mean a vanity score like an NPS or a CSAT. I don't do those. They don't matter. Somebody can hate a course that's exactly what they needed or love something that was not useful. I don't ever do those. I steer everyone away from those. What best prepares that scared person sitting in the brewery table in front of me for a cloud native career future? And really for me, my funded reason is accelerates the entire transformation initiative either faster or better. Less rework, less blowups, less mistakes, better quality, less bugs to the user, all that stuff. The answer is synthesis. Build something. And my motto is everybody builds, everybody demos, end to end, just real life. And what inspired me for this is there is one cert that to this day people still speak about in hushed tones of respect. And this is going to show my background as a recovering network engineer, but there's a cert called the CCIE, the Cisco Certified Internet Expert. And I don't know about after COVID, but at least before it, here's how it works. I remember when I was a little baby associate engineer working in a network lab, my mentors and principal architects used to tell me, if someone tells you that they have a CCIE because they passed the written, ignore that person. No, they don't. It is a brutal 4-hour written exam that is just the prereq for the actual exam, the practical. It's $10,000. You fly to Cisco headquarters, and there's another one, I think, in Florida. Again, I don't know about now, but in the before time. And you show up at 8 a.m. in this little data center with fans running and all this network gear and racks, and they go thunk, and they drop a binder that's this thick in front of you, and they say, build that network. Good luck to you. And you open it up, and you start jacking things in, and you're turning on protocols, and you're bringing up all this multi-layer, pretty complex network that they want with business requirements and tech requirements. And then on lunch, they break a bunch of stuff, and they don't tell you what they did. And you come back and you're like, what did they do? Why is this not working? And it's diabolical, man. Like some of this stuff you have to packet capture on certain links, and it's 1 bit. They flipped, that screwed up the packet handshake, and you got to know that, and you got to know all the different things in the handshake so you can reverse engineer it and fix it. And if at the end of the day, your network works and meets the requirements, congrats, you are the latest CCIE. And it's hard. And it tests synthesis and on-the-fly problem solving. That's powerful. That's why it's so special to this day. And every year, I don't know if they still do this, but when I was talking to them, they bring in about 100 previous years CCIE winners, and they give them the new one, and they all fail. And they tune it down a little bit until 70% can pass, and that's the new one. So it stays hard. That's why it's so special in the industry. As another little anecdote I want to drop out there, Amazon, their solutions architect org, their SA org, is considered one of the big destination orgs internally. Everyone wants to transfer there if they can. They're the wizards that are working with external customers, designing all the neat stuff with all the latest things, the art of the possible, right? They told me, tons of internal applicants wanting to transfer there that have all of their internal certs, and they blow the interview because they can't problem solve on the fly. It's so different to test the art of synthesis than it is to just remember all of the information for a rote exam. And that was my inspiration for what we're going to talk about today and my guidance for everybody. We started talking about, I need you to build the Lego pirate ship, not play with the little Lego pieces. So let's work backwards. Here's a picture of the architecture we're going to build today. A decomposed, single, tiny vertical slice that's representative of one of our actual functional domains inside Hyperforce Falcon is what we call it internally. It's 3 AZs. It's multi-tiers of EKS. It's a transit gateway. It's VPC spanning all those with segmented properly security groups. And it's got to be real zero trust. And by the way, the solution we're going to talk about only exists for 4 hours at a time. So every week, make sure you convert your deployments to Terraform, or this will reset and you'll be sad. As in enforcing wonderful infrastructure as code discipline simply by its very nature, using the actual tech, not just the cloud vendor specific ones you get in the cert paths, which leads me to our particular case study. This is who my customer was internally, what we first prototyped this with. Substrate engineering org is first-party syseng, neteng, honestly, my old teams, infrastructure engineering and architects. I spent time not only in our network engineering team and site reliability, but I was an architect on our detection and response team that designed our next-gen intrusion detection and network security stuff in our data centers. So it's kind of my people from like another life. And what we did is we really thought about their true outcomes, what will be different in the business, and start from that. It's not what you might think. We split them into two teams, orange team and blue team. And they had different outcomes based on what their true reason for being here was. Orange team, general career growth, cloud native readiness, IDPs as individual development plans, long-term pivots. That data center engineer, he's here. He's in orange team. His outcome is that thing I was talking about before, building and shipping an actual simulated functional domain. That's it. Do everything it takes over the course of some amount of time to do that. We've got everything built up. We've got all the business and functional requirements, and we just put it on a screen and we meet every 2 weeks. That's it. And we're going to move a little bit closer each of the way there. Yes, we take role and all that stuff. And then you get to go to your leaders and you say, I want your metric going on your V2 mom or your success metric for the year to say, I want 100% of my engineers to demonstrate minimum tangible readiness for this by having shipped a simulated functional domain that carried traffic. That's transformative. It's not, I want everybody to take a class. That's part of how it happens, but it's not the point. It's backwards. A lot of these leaders will come to me and they'll begin with the solution in mind, which is a human instinct, I understand. And they'll go, oh, we need Python training. Why? What will be different as a result of all of your engineers absorbing and getting better at Python? Well, okay, so we're managing our firewalls manually right now. We need, okay, we're getting a little closer. Let's keep tugging on that. And you push back against your leaders and customers and guide them to what their own true outcome is, because they usually show up without that having truly been thought about. Then you measure that instead. And the dirty secret is I don't actually care if they do anything that I put together. They can go watch YouTube. I don't care. That's not the point, because it's just about getting yourself lost and unlost, just like the real pit of success, lost and then unlost. Now, blue team, the other half, they're actually doing it for real. They're going to be shipping production services in Hyperforce in the next 3 to 6 months. Theirs is a different tangible outcome. They were aligning a shadowing program where they go actually do shifts in Slack with the support team, for lack of a better word, that is white gloving and helping other service owners. So they begin to see all these repeated questions. They begin to see around corners. It's going to shorten their own times because they've encountered all these problems already from other people. And at the end, now they are really meaningfully accelerated and know exactly who to talk to and exactly where to go. So we also, I don't know if we're going to measure this because it can be sensitive, but we might have career transition capability and hiring paths that did not exist before. Again, the real outcome, what really matters. And so the complication, though, is you can't just have an AWS account at Salesforce, even for individual learning, like what I mentioned before. Threat surface, cost to serve. Left this service running for 2 years. Whoops, whose $50,000 bill is that? Forgotten cloud infrastructure is a thing. And this is, in some ways, what Falcon and Hyperforce is for. You must enter that process, but it's gigantic with a bunch of security assessments and overhead and requirements and all these teams you got to talk to and managed internal services you have to use now. And orange teams just learned in AWS itself, guys, like relax. So not necessarily all those Hyperforce internals. So what do we do? How do we help them? How do you make a lean, mean, outcome-driven program that gets the tech out of your way and lets you get right to the actual thing? These things are magical. Linux Academy had them originally. A Cloud Guru bought Linux Academy, and then Pluralsight bought A Cloud Guru. There's always a bigger fish. So A Cloud Guru, cloud sandboxes. That I just need an AWS account. The price of the A Cloud Guru subscription, this one feature is worth it alone. And that's before you get to all the other nifty stuff. They've got great labs, great end-to-end success-oriented labs where you go in one end of this and you go out the other, and you will guaranteed have shipped a load balancer that carries traffic. Okay, fine. Those are great too. And we put together curated paths. We still did that work to have the paths, to have the classes, to have the readiness, and all the labs that lead up to what we think would effectively prepare someone to ship this. But this is all we're using. And every week we have a team. They are nominated for this. And we get together and everybody builds, everybody demos. That's the principle. It's that simple. And we use these. You click that button, you get a full AWS account with limitations. Don't Bitcoin mine in it, please. And it gets it for 4 hours. So we bypass the whole thing. No cost to serve, no threat surface, no nothing, because it's all going to evaporate. And like I said before, they know that. So this timer's ticking down. You better save everything in infrastructure as code. You better have a good Terraform manifest. And next week, when you continue, you load up your Terraform, you push it up, and all your new infrastructure spins back up, and you continue a little further. I had the VPCs. Then next week, I had them segmented. The next week, I had one layer of EKS. The next week, I figured out how that works. So I have 3 of them now. Now I have a transit gateway, and I made sure that it's routing right and it's going through. And each week, you move towards these milestones of minimum functional readiness. And now, if that person were to sit down in an interview, rather than what are the 7 types of OSPF link state assignments, or what are the order of operations of IAM logic? Who cares? No, tell me about an infrastructure that you've designed and built. Great, happy to tell you. We have armed that person with a capability they did not have before. And we essentially did it in what I call the YShape. So phase 1 was the whole ramp up. And that was both folks together, orange and blue. And that was a combination of a custom couple of different Pluralsight channels that I've curated. I've curated 55 plus custom channels for Tech and Prod. And we have 3,500 custom channels curated by our own customers internally. So that's a pretty big hit. And I always show up with one ready to go that is more or less the equivalent of the class. We also have the EKS class, 100% recommend that here. I got to consult on it from AWS, so our stamp is on it. And that's kind of a neat way to sort of be immortalized in those. It's 3 days, and it's all about how you run containers on EKS. That's about as close as we can get to the Hyperforce reality. And then a bunch of stuff starts to change with what we've got on top. And everyone's doing those because we know at the end of that, everyone's got the baseline ready, no matter where they are. You're going to kind of end up ready for the second part. Then we split them off, and those 2 outcomes that I was talking about before, there they are. That's where those come in. The shadowing program begins then. The A Cloud Guru sandbox build workshops begin then. No certs. The classes happen if they want. I always give people a choice of a class or a virtual self-paced equivalent. And as close as I can, I try to have them be about 90% equivalent. And now everybody pick. I earmark them seats in the class if they want it. And then if not, we have the other one available for them. And we do track attendance and we do track engagement with those, but that really is just for us. That's not the actual outcome that we're looking for. And the fact that we were able to track those things at the very end gains leadership's buy-in. You can see the execs' eyes widen when they realize that there might be a way to tangibly track a difference that didn't exist before. And this was essentially a huge hit. It's working. We are repeating this with more and more teams, and we're starting to provide a dedicated path. And we're sort of doing something like a minimum hireable, like if you kind of combining these, so the output of orange goes into blue. So in other words, if you are one of those data center engineers that has finished that program, you're eligible for the shadowing program now. And we are bringing them the value prop of qualified candidates internally that already have a known baseline because of all this stuff. And now we can message to people that we are doing our best to hire internally and not externally. That's pretty powerful when you're able to tell that story. And we are using our team now as a tangible retention metric, showing people we are not writing you off, and here's how. And we message that. We also have this built into, and I encourage all of you to do this, the Hyperforce project work streams as a skills readiness work stream right there alongside with the engineering work. We always get forgotten. We always get put at the end. We always are a nice to have. No. The more you do this and find one project at a time and start building your reputation internally, the more this becomes a standard practice of skills readiness first, not later, when the window is first learning, not after we're all done and whoever joined at the end. And then finally, I also really encourage teams to make this work visible. And I'm pretty sure this is where I'm going to talk about that. Yeah, goals, signals, and metrics. So I always talk about the tangible thing I was talking about. How many shipped cloud builds? I had 100 people. I want to see 100%. 100 shipped cloud builds. Amazing. That's it. We also track lab attendance and incentivize that. If you attend 80, 90, 100% of the labs, then whatever, we'll give you some cool thing. And we show the dedication of people to this. Sometimes you've done something where if everyone completes it, all of you get lunch with the executive and we ask the executive to ask good questions and show, look what I learned at school, Dad, you know, kind of like happiness for what they're doing, and they feel the visibility. That's a little more valuable than just like, here's a shirt or some swag. It's how about some exec face time where they thank you for what you did and they know, like, you get to tell them what you learned. Awesome. I do a very light LES score, and I'm still iterating on this myself, but right now I'm doing 1 through 5 or 1 to 10. At the beginning, rate your intellectual confidence at engaging with this technology. And I've been realizing since then that I am falling victim to not mitigating Dunning-Kruger here, inaccurate self-knowledge. And some people score themselves wrong, as in too high or too low, because it's incorrect. So what I think I'm going to do instead is a delta. But for now, what we're doing is 1 through 5, and in the first 5 minutes, rate your, or 1 through 10, rate your intellectual confidence at this. High, low, whatever. And right at the end of this entire thing, okay, rate it now. Is there a tangible growth of our engineers feeling more confident at engaging with this technology? Great, I'll take it. That's honestly close enough. We don't need CSAT. We don't need those other things. We need the outcome of showing that our engineers feel better. And then we show that positive delta. If I see a negative delta, I've been doing more research into that, and I think that's Dunning-Kruger, where they realize I was overconfident, and now I know how much I don't know. And my confidence relatively has dropped because I realize how large the universe is, which is sort of awesome and interesting, and but not kind of the usual story we want to tell and backfiring. So we're going to probably use like a show me your positive delta of your estimated percent. If you guys are doing dedicated ones of these for entire teams that are like a cohesive single team, not just open enrollment, then you have a special capability that you can add in here. You can mitigate Dunning-Kruger by saying, don't rate yourself, rate your team. How ready do you think the team is for this? That's different. How ready do you think you are? I don't know. A lot, a little, inaccurate, Dunning-Kruger. It's woven into our neurology. How ready do you think the team is based on everything you said? There's a moment of synthesis there where they have to recall a ton of information and filter it through critical thinking and then produce a conclusion. Okay, now we're talking. That mitigates it, and you get something a little more interesting. Teams self-rated themselves, or people self-rated their teams' readiness as higher. And you can kind of trust that a little more without that psychological effect in there. Very cool. And then we might count, if we can, how many people are being interviewed, how many qualified candidates, were there any gaps, how many people tangibly showed a path forward that wasn't there before. And one of the things I always try to encourage here is add a single epic with the desired end state of minimum viable skills readiness is reached at the team or the work level of the product or whatever. One story per person of attaining that minimum readiness. And it's fine if it takes longer to complete than a sprint. That's fine. Whatever the hell it takes. And now you have another burn down of, is everybody, according to whatever their particular subjective reasons are, at the minimum level of readiness. And you don't close the story until everybody builds, everybody demos, until you do the demo. Here it is. I built this thing in the cloud sandbox. It works. Let me see it. Show the team live. And you're going to do that demo and you're going to show everybody. And then ready for review, closed. You don't close the story until you demoed it. And that's really easy. Rather than tracking a bunch of stuff in Cloud Guru and whatever, I just watch the epic. I just watch the user stories, and you watch the burn down happen as everybody does those demos, and the team is self-accountable for those, right? Make the user stories visible. The work has to be visible, and get credit for it. That's always what I tell them. Get credit for your work. Don't just overload them. And I got eviscerated by a team where I brought this to them, and the executives were excited. Individuals on the team were excited. And when I showed them this, they were like, is this work prioritized? You're loading more on us. And I was like, guys, I'm just bringing you presents. I was not anticipating that you would be this, angry at it. And the execs were on the call with me, and they were like, yes, this work is prioritized, folks. Like, I guess we forgot to say that. So another don't be me moment is make sure that you carefully message right up front, the executives have protected X amount of time for you to do this. And that can be visible in the work, so they don't feel like this is loaded on top of their nose to the grindstone. If you think about the product manager mentality of jobs to be done and impediments and things like that, the biggest oppositional force we all hear our customers tell us to effective learning is always prioritization and time, right? Everybody always says, I don't have time to do this because my work is more important. I'm too busy just doing it to go take time to learn and do something different. My concept, I try to call that is skills debt, just like tech debt. You build it up over time, and it is a debt that must be paid all at once or a little bit at a time. But either way, life extracts that debt as the fast-moving tech industry moves on, and at some point, it must be paid. So the way I sell that to people is I know that time is their biggest resource that is their impediment. I'm going to weave in emotional messaging to them when I do the kickoff, when I write the welcome doc, here's your Neato program, where I say, this is how much time I've saved you. I always say that. It's an 18-hour learning path. I made it 4. Or you're going to do in 2 weeks what takes engineers 4 months to learn feeling around in the dark like this. Sell them the what's in it for you before you say a single other word. And then you get the true emotional buy-in, because you're going to really the human-centric design of where they are. If you just try to give them an ever-increasing laundry list of logical reasons why clearly this is the best thing they should do, it will be a checkbox. They'll do it to get you off their back. They'll ask if it's mandatory, whatever. If you build in, we know what your life is like. We know emotionally what you're feeling, and we've incorporated that into our messaging, then you'll get true believers and true buy-in. And that's where real change comes from. Being listened to, not being talked at. And that takes a while for a lot of organizations to learn. If you weave that value into all of your messaging and everything you do, you'll notice this human-centric transformation happen that sources it from those values. And so my call to action for everybody is just forget these certs, forget this industry paradigm, and go find, some of you already are doing this and it's wonderful. And I am in awe of you and your student as well. Where you already do, you go find the architects, you go find the tech leaders, but usually it's the architects, it's the chief nerds. And you ask them, can you draw me a picture of a small, tiny, decomposed version of that big thing, that slice? If a person was going to build just one piece of that entire thing in 2 months, what would that look like? Oh, well, we've got 800 of these things. Okay, what, can we just have one? Oh, we've got 5 replicated. Can we just have one? Great. Or is the minimum atomic level 2 so they get the replication? Cool, that's fine. Whatever, a tiny vertical slice, and go partner with them and make sure that they've informed whatever these business requirements are on the scenario that you're going to run with everybody that matches what they are going to see in the real world. And become a key swim lane owner alongside the engineering leaders. Kick the door down for every single leader that's the executive sponsor of whatever that transformation is or whatever that big project is, and say, hey, I think you might need a skills readiness swim lane there to make sure that you're measuring that your human beings are even ready. The way I usually say this is, we're getting our tech ready for our human beings. This is getting our human beings ready for our technology. And you can't forget that. Lots of folks do. That, you pitch that being a swim lane, you're part owner, they're part owner. The other dirty secret is I don't do this. I am the consultant to scale myself to do that, because I could do maybe 12 teams a year with this. But how do I do this for hundreds of teams a year? It's replicating this process, showing each one the success of the previous one. Buzz begats buzz. Eventually people hear about it and they look over the fence and go, can we have that? And you deputize owners on their team. You make sure that it's accountable on their V2MOM or whatever your accountability matrix is. And they're the ones on the hook for driving the program. You're the one on the hook for making sure the program's wonderful. They're different things. And you also track the total amount of programs in general. And the difference is, sure, well, then what are we here for? Couldn't they have just done that themselves? Yeah, but it might have sucked. It's wonderful because of you. You're the L&D professional that has this outcome-driven mindset. That's where you come in. You're the one that's going to transform how they do this and transform the whole business as a result when you do it at scale for hundreds of teams, not just 5 or whatever. Always have the mindset of getting your people lost and then helping them learn how to get unlost. And my call to action, if there's engineering leaders here, is find your L&D teams, the folks like us, the technical learners, first, not later, and bring them in as early swim lane owners when that precious window exists between the architects first having the calls and the paper architecture of whatever the idea is and the implementers of it actually beginning to do it. That's your sweet spot. You can shorten things by months if you do it there. But if you wait until it's already happened, you don't really shorten things a lot, and there's a lot of diminishing returns. That can be a tough sell because usually everybody's ready, fire, aim, and doing this. and they just start, and you got to flail all over the place and find these. The smaller your company, the easier it is because there's less rooms where it happens, to quote Hamilton, to jump into things. So to the engineering leaders, go find them, tell them about these, and partner on these outcome-driven things. Engineering enablement and learning now is product velocity later. It is absolutely worth your time to do these things as early as possible. And a little moment of pride on my part here, just to brag. This just happened a couple of weeks ago. A new Hyperforce cloud substrate thing is coming up. And they came and found me because of me doing this enough times now that I've earned that trust and the visibility for the learning team. The moment the architects put their pen to paper, now we're talking super early. And we engaged with everyone of how long do you have? How much time are we protecting? How ready do we want to get them in this amount of time? How much can we measure it? Beautiful. That's the holy grail. It took me about a year to build the clout and the reputation internally of being known for producing these things. But once you start doing that and building on each successive success, you start seeing things like that. And now you're a regular partner. And it's to the point now when we buy companies, acquisitions, they hear about us. And they're like, hey, we heard about that. Can we go find them? That's what can happen for you if you keep hustling and always have this product mentality about the learning that you're producing. The learning is the product. All of the product management framework I'm secretly using, I just don't say that. And that's part of the secret of our success. I'm not just a rote program manager. I'm not just a kind of traditional L&D person of what would you say your proficiency gaps are? Let's address them. I don't care. We're going to always go to where our customers truly are and the real job to be done they have. And finally, the other selfish thing is where I think the cloud industry should go next. Imagine if these learning platforms made this more easy for you. Right now, none of them are truly multi-substrate yet, because a lot of them rely on the cloud platforms themselves to help produce their content. So AWS just isn't going to make multi-substrate content. They are incentivized to not. It bugs me. There's always this angle, this little bit of adoption angle and everything AWS gives you of like, it's all our own services. So we keep you in the ecosystem. And we're like, we're not doing that. Stop trying to make fetch a thing. It's not going to happen. Like, stop making me go learn X-ray. The world is using and has decided on the open source one. Well, I get it. I have empathy for those internal training and cert teams because their funding exists and comes from them having an adoption angle and an ecosystem funnel. It's a tough spot for them. So that's why I love things like A Cloud Guru, what was Linux Academy, O'Reilly, these platforms that are separate and zoomed out and can do whatever they want. That's where I need all of you and your voice to raise as one with me to ask these folks for more multi-substrate content, full end-to-end cloud native computing foundation things, not just the proprietary managed services and open source. A Cloud Guru's on their way, have them do more. And if you're working with AWS TNC or Google Cloud's partners or Azure's partners, I know them well. I've presented to their executive. This is an interesting one. I presented to their AWS executive meeting for certs, and I told them why I actively steer people away from certs. And you could see the people's eyes like, what? And I told them, if you really want to help us, I'm not just going to, throw shade. This is what would. Go meet us where we are. This is what we need. If you work with AWS, tell them you want this. The more customer demand they see, the more it strengthens that case for their product managers. Multi-substrate is the future. We're not the only ones playing here. More and more mature tech companies are realizing, did y'all see that giant AWS global outage that's not supposed to even be able to happen a few weeks ago because their backplane and their networking layer like flooded itself to death? That's crazy. That changed a little bit of the trust in the whole cloud model away from not just, oh, you just have to be multi-AZ. Oh, you just got to be multi-region. You got to be multi-substrate. Netflix, Jasmine, I know you're probably nodding at this. That's part of their business continuity strategy. What if a bunch of perfect meteors landed and wiped AWS off the map? We need to be able to swing a bunch of DNS over and move over to the Google Cloud. That's hard. And we need a lot of targeted learning in that area. There are market leaders. There are people that do this. We need learning to take us in that direction. And the same with open source cloud native computing foundation stuff. I don't just need CloudFormation. I need Terraform. Have that woven into the official guidance from these folks. Number two, the learning platforms need to match us and go to the same outcome-based thinking. They're thinking about it. I've talked to the board at HCG and O'Reilly, and they're all thinking about this, and they need more of your voices to tell them you want this. If that sandbox And that scenario-based freeform synthesis to demonstrate technical capability is the new bar to hit. The platforms must enable that exact scenario. They're not right now. It's there, sort of. It's a button you can hit and it gives you the infrastructure and we do it. They should be helping us do that. If they are allowing us to self-author platform challenges or labs in a really easy way that allow us to publish content they never anticipated, we're getting there. That's a little better. If our customers are just saying, I need an AWS account to play around, how do we enable that safe, fast fail experimentation and their actual work context? I don't just mean on Rails Quick Labs. I mean in a real, safe, ephemeral environment that enables this rapid curation and creation of these challenges and experiences. And then another thing I think we really need, effortless, crowdsourced prioritization and transparency. And I'm really borrowing this from Stack Overflow and from kind of, the modern model where a lot of content goes. If the vast majority of your users are asking for more EKS and Spinnaker interactions, how can that be surfaced in a way where others can +1 it quickly? Salesforce has the ID exchange externally. We're starting to play with an internal Stack Overflow. Awesome. How can you apply that to the learning and these code challenges and these code labs and this environment? What are people demanding? Can they superimpose their value on it? Can we add that in the platforms right there? Imagine if in ACG, your 4,000 licenses or whatever you buy, right there, it was like, hey, what's your org asking for right now? I wish there was another Spinnaker lab. And all 4,000 people are like, hell yeah, +1. And now you see this big bar come out. They're superimposing value. You get ideas and art of the possible that your other folks didn't have. Push them. And finally, this one's a little more out of the box, but based on my time playing with the deep data in these platforms and the fidelity of where it can go, real-time advanced sentiment analysis embedded in the on-demand microlearning. My learners right now, Pluralsight doesn't offer this out of the box. They normally offer you analytics at the fidelity of the course. But behind the scenes, they gave us as an experiment a module level fidelity spit out. They can't do it all the time. The platform's not set up for that. It was really just kind of a co-experiment together, a one-time data export, and thank you for that favor. But I could see it in the data. My learners, after I did 80% curation down from whatever it was, 18 hours to 4, they still would jump to the exact 15 minutes they wanted at the end, a maximum of a heat map of maybe 50% usage. What that says to me is not they're watching 50% of what they should. What that says is they're watching 100% of the 50% that's useful. And I need to know that. I need to know where they're going. I need to know why. And so if they jump to the last 15 minutes and watch the demo, and then they get out, and you can see that in the Pluralsight module or clip level data, and then they don't touch the platform for 2 months, then instead of forcing them to watch hour plus videos and do all this, massive monolithic stuff, how do we go to where they are? And how do the platforms and the data and the analytics help enable us to do that in ways that they didn't anticipate? If you see, here's really what I see here. Have you guys ever seen on Twitch, when you rewatch a stream, there's the chat going up and these little hearts floating up of as people like things, they'll kind of slam it, whatever, slam that like button. Imagine if you pull up an A Cloud Guru or a Pluralsight or an O'Reilly video course, and you see this heat map on the play bar of little hearts and a little red chunk. The first thing you do is you go, well, interesting. What does everyone in my org know that I don't know, that they all slammed, not just the like button or 5 stars for the whole thing, but at this exact second, I want to go see what that is. Real-time sentiment analysis. And look at that. We've automated us. I don't have to curate. I'll still do it. But our learners are doing it for us. They're finding where the value is. They're slamming a big heart button and it etches it right there into stone. And now we can watch over the shoulders and chase where all that value is. They're not doing this right now. But if more of you like this vision and tell them, they might. So that's why I'm selfishly telling you all of this and getting you to dream big with me right now. I want us to push this industry forward to where it helps us. We don't have to go rebuild all of our own stuff anymore. Imagine if our learning platforms allowed this kind of automatic crowdsourced valuation. I don't just mean a thumbs up. That's transformative. In fact, this was my inspiration. Imagine if your learners could do that right there. I was so into it, I forgot to advance the slide. But that's what I see in my head. SoundCloud, bam, on that, there's the value. Everybody puts their own comments, their own thumbs up, and they become an extension of us. And now we are enabling self-curated learning at scale due to the nature of the technology itself, not just throwing more of us at the problem. That is, to me, part of the holy grail of this. All right. Well, that was a picture of what I was trying to explain to you just now, but that's what I see in my head. Literally that right there. And I'm going to go watch that exact 5 minutes, that blob. And maybe, just maybe, now we start to get to have some fun with machine learning, auto curation, and that sentiment. Hey, if you're in engineering in this exact group, there's an 80% chance based on what everyone in your group has loved that you want to watch this 5 minutes. Wow. That's pretty cool. Thanks, platform robot. You bet. I will go do that. And now, again, we're just kind of stepping back. Like Instagram, it keeps you in that feed, right? Because it's self-curating and the model is always iterating and handing you a drip feed of content that's microdosed to exactly what you want for that dopamine loop. I want that in these. And then all of us benefit more. If you like these, remember what I'm asking today and go find your product managers from whatever the on-demand learning company is that you use and pitch them this vision. Tell them I sent you. And with that, ask me anything. I know I went fast. I know this was a lot, but any questions? What did you like? What did you not? Love to hear what you guys have for me.
I'll jump in. I always have questions. First off, how many engineers do you have at Salesforce that you're responsible for training? And then 2, the training that you set up, like the blue and the orange path, is that training that your team provides, or do you have subject matter experts that are providing that training?
Lovely questions. Okay, so the first question was how many engineers total? And I actually think about it as concentric rings of increasing depth. Like the ring to the outside needs to know everything. The ring inside of that needs to know not everything, a subset of that. And the ring inside that needs to know a subset of that. So it depends, but the whole audience is between 5,000 and 8,000, depending. And I mean, we onboarded 30,000 people during the pandemic. So Salesforce is like it's just going nuts. So I would say it depends, but the audience that needs to know the most is about 2,000 people. And then the audiences go down from there to, a few hundred to even a couple of 100 groups. Like that initial Y-shaped audience I was talking about was about 150 people to start. And it's probably going to expand at the end of this year to probably about 500 to 700. And ultimately, the lowest level of knowledge, I'm doing some of this at just simple curated channels and the class that I put right next to each other, and I author them and give them to the entire org at once. Do you want the class? Here it is. Do you want the matching Pluralsight channel? Here it is. Our classes sell out in like 2 hours. So I often will say, I'm so sorry. I know they sold out. Here is the matching channel. Off you go. And I just show up with those ready. And I have a matrix in a Confluence page of all the substrates, AWS, GCP, Azure, my class, if there is one, and my channel for each. And then all the 4 major pillars of the CNCF things: Spinnaker, Kubernetes, Helm, Terraform, the class, and the channel for each. And that is like open enrollment. That's straight up, y'all just go do this if you want. And we track that. That's thousands of people. We bought all of AWS's EKS class for the year. There aren't any, because we bought them all. So we are putting a couple thousand through the class. And then again, as I was saying earlier, thousands are doing the on-demand learning. And this really focused, as a segue to your second question, outcome-driven experience is for kind of a nominated smaller cadre. And I make them do it. So the SME architect in their group, we deputized and we made the program great. We worked with him to make sure it was outcome focused and proper L&D, but also showed up with something ready to go. I didn't just make him do it. That's part of my secret weapon I encourage you guys to do, is show up with like an 80%, not a blank paper. If you show up with a blank paper of what should we do, people just, you see it happen, their eyes right off. But if you show up with 80% of something, even if it's mostly wrong, they'll just jump. They love to tell you that you're wrong. And they're like, that's not right at all. You got to do that. And when they're doing that, I'm smiling to myself like, got him. Because when they're engaged like that, if you can't do this and you don't want to do that, I'm like, so you care now. Perfect. I have no qualms about being way wrong when I show up with a swag at what they have to do because it snares them. So long story short, they're the ones running the program. I set it up. I help them understand how to track all the metrics that like attendance, and I help them. We fund ACG for them, and I track and we manage all of the entrance to that. And I make sure that the program is great. I also am an evangelist of it, and I get it on all the V2 moms, and I go pitch it to executives in 60 seconds or less and get them bought in, and they just do it. So having that partner would be key, because if I was doing that, I would have an order of magnitude less impact than I'm doing now. I know that was a long answer, but hopefully that was what you were looking for.
That works. You also said that you offer it in person and online?
No, it's all online.
It's all online. Okay.
Yeah, in person is gone forever.
Got it.
I mean, I would love it. I'm an extrovert, surprising nobody here. And I really, really love in-person learning. I don't have any planned at all. I would love to do that, but unless we're flying people to things, everybody went and moved away. So it's just not what it was before when we had offices where people would gather for these things. Unless there's some amazing what's in it for you thing, I don't see that coming back. Everything I do is virtual first, and it's got to be damn special. Like you work in a cleared environment off the grid and there is no internet, you know, that kind of thing. And you have spooky stuff that has to be on-prem. But other than that, okay. Yeah.
I think I should have said synchronous or asynchronous, where you do it over Zoom sessions versus they can watch something on their own time.
It's got it. Okay. So it's not, it depends on what we're talking about. The channels are fully self-paced. That's off you go. The classes are fully synchronous because they're VILT, show up 3 days, classic. And the workshops are both. You can do as much prep as you want throughout the week, but we have a synchronous 90 minutes to 4 hours, if that's the whole length of the thingy, regular cadence meeting that you're expected to be in and ask questions and watch that real-time interactivity and synthesis happen that only happens in that magic when you're together like that. And the other one really is the demo. The demo is the real key part, because when someone's accountable with human eyeballs looking at them in the moment, okay, they can make a recording or whatever, but that is synchronous, and we make sure of that on purpose. And the way we scale that, again, is it's every so often, it's blended. It's, you know, a limited cadre of people at once. You have to be nominated to be part of it. That's another thing. I've noticed that exclusivity breeds interest, even if it doesn't need to be exclusive, even if I don't need to gate it. Sometimes I do, because then people are like, what do you mean I can't get in? Well, now I want it. And that exclusivity is, again, part of the emotional angle I'm always using to get people to buy in and to be part of it. And we'll sell to people, you are part of the tip of the spear. You are part of the elite few that have been hit. Maybe I'm totally lying, but I don't care. I will say that. You are part of the elite few that are added to this first tip of the spear for this exclusive invite-only thing. And then you watch just the way you word things builds that engagement, especially when I've already got the execs on my side and they know I'm going to say that, and they'll say it. They say, we've protected time for you. The difference in engagement is night and day. We have a question online. Holly asks, what is a good sized team you set up for Orange Blue? I think Orange is 50 at a time right now. And that's about enough, where we have the architect leading everything and he has a helper. And, you know, classes are 20 usually. Sometimes they're 25 if they'll let you do that. And then these workshops are about a cadre of 50 at a time. And then Blue, because that's shadowing, that's different. That's really intense. That's like the team has to do it all together cohesively. And it's just a targeted set of a couple of teams that also depends on the capacity of the teams to be shadowed. So it really depends. Sometimes it's a trickle of 5, sometimes it's 20, but we're trying to actually work with them to schedule out the shadowing programs and squeegee that out over time so that we don't overwhelm either person or either side. That's a little smaller. It's a little more in the weeds. But I'm okay with that because that's the smallest audience after this is all said and done. Good questions. Keep hitting me. What else?
You mentioned the minimum viable skills readiness. Love that term. When it comes to the self-assessment on their skills. Do you ever personalize the training based on where they feel they fit? Like maybe they can skip portions of the training because they already feel competent in certain areas, so that you get the most efficient path.
That's such a good question. Okay, so there's a couple different answers. If I'm using Pluralsight skill IQs, does everyone here know what those are? They're pretty cool. They're not perfect, but they are machine learning driven skills assessments that ask you a series of about 20 questions in about 20 minutes. And it uses a machine learning algorithm they call Iris under the hood, that's Bloom's taxonomy and a couple other things. And you inject yourself into the model with a self-assessment of, are you a novice or an expert, whatever. And that injects you into the starting point. And then over time, it predictively guesses the probability of you getting each successive question right or wrong based on where you are in the model and whether or not you did before you. And it self-tunes over it until at about the end. And they learned much more than 20 questions didn't give you much more of a high fidelity answer, and less was not enough. So 20 is the sweet spot. It spits you out with a skill IQ score between 0 and 300, kind of like IQ, hence the name, and a quintile of like emerging novice, emerging proficient, emerging expert, or whatever. And then it auto curates a custom playlist just for you down to the module of the few modules of content you need to watch and absorb, that it knows if you get those questions right will hit you the next level. It's awesome. It's me. It's a machine learning driven curator. However, I can't change them. The machine learning model is trained. If it's AWS and it asks you about CloudFormation, we don't use CloudFormation. I'm so sorry. And I have to warn people for that. If you want to hit expert, you're going to have to go become an expert in something we don't even use. And it's up to you if that's valuable. Also, again, Dunning-Kruger, I've noticed that at least in skill IQs, Salesforce people consistently rank themselves lower than they score higher than they think they deserve in skill IQ, because again, most of Pluralsight's other customers are banks, insurance, and a person came to me and said, why did I score proficient in Go? I've never seen Go before. And I was like, are you a coder? He's like, yeah, I know lots of Python. That's all I ever do, but I don't know Go at all. I'm not proficient. I was like, well, can you like reverse engineer logic, like reading it and figuring out what things are doing? The people taking this can't do that. And they were like, I don't even know what that is. So you are proficient in a way, according to the machine learning module, in coding, and thus in a way Go. So what I do there is Pluralsight, if you have Enterprise Edition, lets you create role IQs that are collections of skills that you can skew the quintiles. So I skew them up and I make everything 10% harder. And that's kind of, in some ways, accounting for that. The other side of what you're asking, how much do you tune this, is I let them do that. And I tell them, you don't have to do a damn thing. You can do all of it. And most of you would love to and probably will. If you do none of this, all I care about and report on and track is that end outcome. Can you build and ship this thing? And if you ignore everything I've got and you go watch YouTube and read docs, awesome, because that's how you do it in the real world anyway. I don't care if you engage with all of this. I will curate it. I will put all that work in. I will show it to you as lovely. And I'd say about 80% of them who wouldn't take it. And about 20% are like, nah, and they just jump straight to this. That's fine too. So it's not that I let them test out. It's that I don't require them to do any of it in the first place. And all that I measure and I make sure that's known from the beginning is the outcome. And then if they can't build the outcome, there's still stuff to do. We'll still go back to this. So I sort of skip that whole thing. The tailoring, I let them do it. The tailoring all comes from working backwards, as you would do in the real world. The only other thing I'll say is in my self-paced channels, I don't always do this, but I will often offer people a choice of, here's my curated channel, eat this, it's good for you, or here's the skill IQ, that's me. It's not perfect. It's not going to ask you all the right stuff, but it's automatic. And you can show your growth to your boss of like, look, I increased by plus 15% of blah, blah, blah. And so I will give them the choice as much as I can and explain to them the difference and let them do it. Hopefully that answers your question. I love these. These are good questions.
Good information. Thank you.
Yeah, go into the execs with that outcome in mind. I always say, I have this amount of space earmarked for you in these. Or I might even say, it's going to cost you $70,000 of classes, and they are worth it. because of that LES score. We are seeing people's confidence raise as a result of doing these. It's worth it. And I usually will look inside and pre-curate this for them. I don't ask the executive, which class do you want? I say, you want this exact class. We're not buying any other AWS classes. No SysOps, no solutions architect, no advanced solutions architect, no security engineering, no DevOps, none of them, just the EKS one, because that's the one that actually gets kind of close to what our reality is. And then I just blanket the earth with that class and earmark them. I also tell the leaders, we have seats aligned for you. Like if you want 100% of these, your folks get first dibs, but they have this window that I will hold the seats for them before I open them up to anybody in the business. And then if they can't, all right, well, then they took 15 and the business takes 5. That's cool with me. They're still all sold out in 4 hours or whatever. And then ultimately the leaders, beginning with the stars in their eyes of, I want 100% of my engineers to ship this exact thing that's proved to work. Usually that's enough, because nobody ever shows up with that. They always do the other way around.
I love that idea of synthesis and sort of showing them what the picture of a pirate ship and having them build it, right? So that really demonstrates the outcome of learning, right?
It does. The outcome is not, I got a cert. The outcome is not, I took a class. The outcome is not, I feel better, although that's sort of true. Mm-hmm. And you can try. In fact, I actually want to pass something on to this audience that I learned at our company kickoff. I got a chance to meet one of our AI ethicists. I've never met one of them before. That was amazing. And she's on our AI ethics team that's scouring the models for bias and for human things showing up. She is teaching me not just the right questions to ask of your data, your learning data, but the questions to not ask. And I've never thought of it that way. Here's an example. I wanted to explore the concept of measuring, was there a shortened time to productivity or a lower bug rate or something, a higher code, anything that showed up in the work in the data set of everyone who did one of our things or everyone who didn't. Pretty basic. Let me just explore and see if there's even a story here. Oh, wait, but then you have to normalize everyone by grade level, because an associate engineer might be here for 1 year and this person is 10-year veteran and they're super fast learning and know all the things and have all the tribal knowledge and context. So my first thought was, got it. I have to normalize by grade level. I did it. Aren't I smart? She went, oh, but wait. Historically in the tech industry, women are in lower grade levels than they deserve. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. That's skewing the data, because if I'm doing it by that, then actually the human story is different. And my human bias is leaking into the model now of the grade levels are appropriate. What if they're not? I'm not saying Salesforce is bad about that. I'm just saying whole tech industry and everywhere. If that's a thing, then it may be that the wrong question to ask is normalized by grade level. It might be that you have to talk to ethics experts and find out where the bias is shown up and how to avoid it. That is new information I got this year, and it helped me so much. Do this the right way in a values-driven way.
So super valuable. I have a whole bunch of one-liners from you. They're super awesome. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
Yeah, skill debt. There you go. It's yours. Go for it.
Yeah, totally. Any other questions, anybody? I wanted to also be cognizant of time. So that was Paul. And what I love about this is that this came from you all, from the audience. So thank you, Paul.